Hi there, welcome to IndyCar on Tuesday the 19th of March today. Now I said earlier on I was going to talk about a case of a Belgian gentleman, a disabled gentleman who's living in the Highlands with his wife and their 22-year-old, not 22-year-old, I think they've got an adult daughter with Asperger's. And the story is from their blog that they're going to have to leave the Highlands where they've been living for the past many years to go to Belgium in order for this gentleman to continue to receive his Belgian pension, which is the only thing that is really keeping them going at the moment. Now, I've looked at this story a little bit more closely, and without wanting to say anything too much about it just now, it seemed a little bit odd that the Scottish Government hadn't responded to any of this couple's pleas for help, because they would have known months ago that this was going to happen, because the Belgian government has apparently decided it's not going to pay the pensions or the benefits of its citizens in the UK after a certain date. Now, I haven't been able to fact check how accurate this story is, but according to the blog, the couple need to leave Scotland tomorrow to move to Belgium in order to claim benefits there, which they're no longer entitled to over in Scotland. The problem for the couple was that they would have to leave their Scottish-born daughter in their home in the Highlands on her own. Now, this daughter, as I understand, a person who has Asperger's syndrome, which I understand very well, having experienced that condition in other people. But what I don't know at the moment is where this daughter is living, what help has been arranged for her, what support has been arranged for her, and as far as I understand it from other sources, the couple have been offered financial assistance by the Scottish Government, but they were required to travel to Inverness to sign some documents to receive it, and according to sources they haven't done so, or they're unable to get the money together to travel from their home to Inverness. Now, that is as much as I know about this story at the moment without prejudging anything, and I'm quite certain that the couple are actually genuine. I think this is a real difficulty. The problem is that it's very easy for people to descend into slagging off the Scottish Government for things which they can't control, and it's very easy for a story like this to become less about the people's plight and more about trying to stir up trouble in Scotland and for the SNP government. So to avoid any risk of doing that sort of thing, I'm not going to prejudice this particular case in any way, only to say that this is typical of what is happening across Scotland with Brexit. Families are being split up, people are being sent back to Europe, or being forced to return to Europe in order to claim things like benefits and pensions, which they would normally automatically receive as EU citizens in Scotland, which technically they still are. There shouldn't really be any reason for the Belgian government to stop paying the pensions of a man who is still a European Union citizen and still living in a European Union country, i.e. Scotland. But it seems to me that the problem here lies with the Belgian government and the UK government not talking to each other and not making sure that people in this family situation can still receive their benefits. Now, I feel very sorry for the family concerned, because they're having to go to Belgium and leave their daughter behind, and that shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't happen anywhere, in fact. But without knowing all the facts of the case, I can't make any comment about whether the SNP is doing something about this or not, because I'm hearing that there have been offers of help to the family officially from the Scottish Government, and that there is money available for them, but they have to get themselves to Inverness. So we'll leave that story there for the moment. We'll just pin it to the board for the moment. But it is, as I say, a typical story of what is happening, particularly across the Highlands. For some reason, we heard about a Canadian couple who are pretty much deported from Scotland simply because they weren't born here, and the UK's intolerant and inhospitable atmosphere that they've created for people who are living here is forcing people out of Scotland. So we're having a continuation of the Highland clearances under a different name, being forced by the xenophobia that's attached to Brexit and the ridiculous rules that the British government is placing on immigrants. and the fantastic amounts of money that are being asked from Europeans and other immigrants or migrants to stay here, thousands of pounds for visas, hundreds of pounds in other fees, £60 for registrations, you know, more fees to extend a visa, another gigantic amount of money that you've got to be able to earn before you're even allowed to cross the threshold. All of this inhospitable atmosphere created by the Tories under Brexit. And it's one reason, if you needed another one, why Brexit is so toxic to the whole of Scotland and the whole of Europe, is that it is dividing us again into individual nationalities. Now, there's nothing wrong with nationalities, but there is no reason why the borders need to close in Europe. There is absolutely no mass influx of migrants coming into Scotland. There is a steady drip feed which maintains our population at its current level. Otherwise our population would be dropping right now. Okay, other things that are happening today. You may have noticed in the press that there is a great amount of focus at the moment on what's happening with the Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, because they, of all the parties in the United Kingdom, with the smallest number of MPs of virtually any party, have suddenly become the key that unlocks Brexit. They've become the kingmakers. And it was widely quoted yesterday by one of their spokespersons, whose name escapes me for the moment, that their price for propping up Mrs May's deal would be a seat at the negotiations. In other words, the DUP wanted to accompany Theresa May to Strasbourg or Brussels to negotiate on behalf of Northern Ireland so that they get as bad a deal as the rest of the UK, which is not what the people of Northern Ireland actually voted for. They voted against Brexit, but the DUP is determined to negotiate the worst possible Brexit that Northern Ireland could get, so that they're treated as badly as the rest of the United Kingdom. And in the process of doing that, they're going to prop up the Tory party, which is literally, the Tory government is about to topple over. The Tories government is the Jenga of governments. You keep pulling out more people from this pile of Tories, and eventually the whole tower is just going to collapse. And it's just a case of how many more people are going to be either fired or resign or walk off in a huff before the whole thing falls flat. Now, we're told this week that Mrs May might delay this so-called third vote, this third meaningful vote on the Brexit deal for a third time. She might delay it if she thinks that she's going to lose. Now, that's a strange thing to say when it's almost guaranteed that she's going to lose. They might as well just say she's going to delay it, because I don't see any way that she's going to win it unless the arithmetic is radically altered overnight. But the choices are quite plain now. If Mrs May's deal is not supported by enough people, and it doesn't even squeak through just a couple of votes, then the only other option is for a very long delay to Brexit, or for the whole thing to be called off by revoking Article 50. And neither of those two options are going to sit well with anybody in the Tory party, and quite a lot of Brexit voters are going to get very agitated if there's any kind of delay now. So what happens next, we don't know. What's supposed to happen next is there's supposed to be another presentation of Mrs May's unaltered deal as the only possible credible option that's left open. And if the British Parliament does not accept it and vote it through, then we're into the realms of begging for a delay of possibly 2 or 3 years from the European Union. But remember, the European Union is not going to give them a delay of 2 or 3 years unless the British government comes up with a plan, something which they say that they will be able to get through Parliament and that will provide a long-term deal for the future. And none of that's been done. There's no talk of that at all. Remember, the agreement that Mrs May has signed is just to let us get out of Europe. It's not to establish a trade deal. In fact, it's not even a deal. It's an agreement to not have a deal at the moment. It's an agreement to wait until they've put a deal together. It's not anything more than that. It really is just the key that opens the emergency exit to the European Union. It allows the UK to fall out the door, but it doesn't give them any way of arresting their fall as they come out, because we would still need to commit ourselves to negotiating a new trade deal with the European Union. And if the red lines that the Tories have put in place remain, and that means no freedom of movement, which is what they were fundamentally going on about, and no membership of the single market, and no membership of a customs union, then that means you can't have a trade deal. You just can't, because a free trade agreement with the European Union is predicated on the 4 principles of the Union itself, which are the free movement of people, of goods and finance and services. Unless those 4 freedoms are maintained by the country, which is trying to negotiate the trade deal, then you can't have a trade deal, because you're not meeting the criteria to get one. And you can't open your borders, and you can't level the playing field. You wanted to keep your doors closed but still have free trade. That is not going to fly. The very best kind of deal that they could possibly have would be a very limited tariff-free trade on some things, but not all, on some things. And we would have no rights to any other parts of the market. This afternoon I watched about an 8-minute long piece from CNN about how the rest of the world views Brexit in the global scale of things, and the way that the world is retreating into protectionism and going back to the old days where every country sort of hoarded its own wealth, shut their doors and put up the shutters and tried to stop foreign imports coming into the countries. That's the way things are going. But they singled out Brexit as possibly being the most destructive act of any government in recent memory. They believed, and the CNN reporter who was explaining this said that there was absolutely no reason why the British government should be trying to leave Europe, other than the fact that they mistakenly have an ideological hatred of Europe. But they forgot that when they signed to join the original EEC, the European Economic Community, and it developed into the European Union, and they signed the Maastricht Treaty and the Lisbon Treaty, that they committed the UK to combining its market with that of the European Union. And given the fact that the English economy is mostly, over 80%, made up of services and finance and banking, there's very little exporting. There's a small amount of what you would call high-tech, high-end technology that's being exported. But both of those things, the banking, the commerce, and the high-end technology, are absolutely dependent on completely integrated markets across the European Union. And Britain has to be integrated into them. Otherwise, that banking industry, the financial services industry, the services industries generally, and this limited amount of high-tech exporting will simply stop working, because they will no longer be able to compete. They'll be too expensive with all the tariffs that will be placed on them. And so the Americans on CNN couldn't work out why on earth the British government would want to inflict this harm upon itself. And they believe, firstly, that as the Brexit damage starts to occur, Ireland and Scotland will gradually disentangle themselves from the UK completely, and Ireland will probably reunify and become again a complete country and a European Union member. Scotland will separate itself completely from England and go back to remaining a European Union member, and that will leave the last part of the British Empire being England and tiny Wales, and that will be it. It'll be England and tiny Wales with a fraction of the business in Europe that they used to have. And given the fact that Mrs. Thatcher ensured that the remaining British economy was based on services and not industries, not exports, but services and banking and white-collar jobs, she has bequeathed to the rest of the UK a dismal future where they are basically selling insurance to one another and selling banking products to each other and not doing really anything else, because the only market that the UK will have left is itself. It will not have the Scottish market anymore, and the Scots will not need it, despite what the Tories have said about England, accounting for 40% of Scotland's exports. We know that's a lie, because what is going through England from Scotland is heading to Europe. It's not going into England. It's not exported to England. It's exported through England and onto the continent. England has very little exports, and so it relies on channeling Scottish exports through its ports and then claiming those in its own books as its own exports. Now, technically speaking, if you classified the UK as one country, technically those exports would be UK exports. But you take Scotland out of the equation and you take all of those exports away from England's motorways and England's ports, and what are they left with? Because Scotland has ports of its own. It has a massive container port at Grangemouth. It has an enormous deep water port at Hunterston, where massive tankers and ships of all kinds can get in and out and take bulk goods to any part of the globe. We don't need to go through Calais. We don't need to go through Dover. We don't need to go through Hull to Zeebrugge. We can go anywhere we like from any of our own ports, and it will save an awful lot of motorway journeys as well. So, in short, what's happening at the moment is we're seeing the breakup, the last death throes of the British Empire. It's killing itself. Basically, Britain's falling on its own sword. And even the people at CNN could see this. And the experts in America, in terms of macroeconomics, fully expect Scotland and Ireland to separate from England now, because it doesn't make any sense for either of those two countries to stay attached to England at all, given what the English voters have voted for. And what they have voted for is an emotional detachment that they have from Europe. They have got this racial thing that's going on in their heads, that they don't like Europe. They've got it into their heads that Europe is a bad place and that we don't want to be doing trade with these Johnny foreigners anymore. That's fine for them. If they want to isolate themselves in that way and they want to shut England down and turn it into a backward, inward-looking country, fine, great, all right for them. But we don't have to do it. And at least the American media, and especially the financial services experts in America and the economists, know that Scots are smart enough not to stick around for that. And they also know that the Irish are not stupid either, and they're not going to stick around for that either. So whatever happens this week, it's out of our hands. And as this couple from the chap from Belgium and his Scottish wife and their daughter have found out, they are the victims of this game of shutting the doors that England is playing. This is not of the Scottish Government's making. The Scottish Government would always try to support people who are being bullied out of Scotland and told to get out by a British system. And I can't imagine for a moment that the Scottish Government would abandon this couple. In fact, I'm fairly certain they already know about this, and if they're not doing something about it, they're probably going to very soon. I certainly hope so. But nothing that we do can change the politics of the UK. We've already seen that. We're outnumbered 10 to 1. We have we have a voice in Westminster, but there's no compunction for anybody to listen to us, because we don't matter. We're too small, we're too insignificant to them. As far as they're concerned, we could just sod off and not come back to Westminster. And yet they forget that it is our oil which is basically propping up their weak economy at the moment. And when we get our oil back, which we will do incidentally, and when we chase them out of our oil fields, which we will do eventually, England will have nothing left except insurance salesmen and burger vans. And that is basically, that's the bequest of Margaret Thatcher. That's what she wanted to turn the UK into, was a bunch of office workers selling each other insurance policies, selling each other new deals on their utilities. But basically it's an internal market. It's shut away from the rest of the world. They don't want anything to do with the rest of the world. They just want little England selling everything to itself, not really having to listen to anybody else, making sure the bananas are nice and bent, so the European Union can't have straight bananas forced on them. By the way, that was a myth. And so that they can get their fishing rights back, which, by the way, they won't have Scotland's fishing grounds anymore. They're going to lose probably about 80 to 90% of their fishing grounds by doing this, because Scotland is going to take them back again. They're going to lose the new Clare oil fields as well, the Clare Ridge. They're probably going to lose Grangemouth, and Ineos will have to pack up and go, because we're probably going to take control of that too. So we're watching the death throes of the UK at the moment. It's a shame, but that's the way it's going. We didn't cause it. This is English voters who've basically been the turkeys voting for Christmas. I really hope they know what they're doing, because the rest of us, we're not going to be standing around waiting for it to happen to us. We are going to vote to get ourselves out of this, and I think we'll be voting pretty soon. I mean, it's not long now before either Brexit is either called off or a hard Brexit with no deal happens. I can't imagine for a minute that Mrs May is going to get away with delaying Brexit for 3 years. There will be absolute chaos in London streets if she does that. Okay, I've got to go. I'll see you later, but just bear in mind that this couple in the Highlands who are being forced to leave their daughter behind and go to Belgium to get this gentleman's pension may not have to do that. There may well be help available to them, and it might well be that they just need to travel to Inverness to get it, which begs the question, if they can afford to fly to Belgium, why can they not afford to travel up the Highlands and into Inverness to get some money from the Scottish Government? There's something about this which doesn't seem to make sense to me. Okay, I'll see you later. Have a great day, and if anything happens on this breaking story about the couple being split from their daughter because of Brexit, I'll let you know. See you later. Bye-bye.